At sunrise, Juniper Creek spit out a silver supercar, like it had a grudge water slapping the open door, while the whole thing rocked in the current, neighbors standing barefoot in pajamas, not sure whether to gasp or film. And all I could think was how 12 hours earlier, the president of our HOA ordered my Sandbag wall gone, because it was ruining the aesthetic line of the community. Water doesn't care about aesthetic lines, it cares about gravity. And if you've ever watched a creek wake up, you know exactly what I mean. My name is Ethan Cole. I moved to Cedar Hollow Reserve because after 25 years designing drainage and highway work for the state, culverts, detention basins, the not glamorous bones that keep towns from drowning, I thought I'd earned quiet a porch, a mug seasons rolling by, that kind of life. And for the first week, it looked exactly like the brochure promised kids looping the cul-de-sac on bikes, lawns like pool tables, a clubhouse that smelled like lemon cleaner, and new carpet. Except the land doesn't read brochures, and the yards were pitched ever so slightly toward a ribbon called Juniper Creek. Pretty name, pretty bank, pretty little lies. If you've ever stood in a basin when a stalled system parks overhead, I clocked the tells. The first evening storm grates that looked handsome, but shallow veneer stone, along the creek that was meant to photograph, while not hold back, a shove of brown water. And I told myself I would keep my mouth shut. I really did, and the first HOA meeting I unfolded my paper map, because nobody argues with paper without looking silly, and I traced the runoff paths with my fingercom voice. No drama, just facts. This bowl funnels straight through our cul-de-sac. If we get 6 inches in 12 hours, the creek will stand up and come knocking. And a few folks nodded like they felt the same tilt under their shoes. Then she walked in with that clipboard, like a badge, and pearls at noon, smile thin as a blade, and said, Cole Cedar Hollow was designed by professionals. We maintain confidence and property values. We do not start rumors about flood zones. And I said, you don't need rumors. You need gutters that work. And she clicked her pen twice like a gavel and said, what we need is uniformity. People panic when they see mess. That word mess stuck to me like humidity, because mess was anything she didn't control. And I decided arguing with a tide was a waste of breath. So I did what men who have done too many night inspections do. I stacked a clean horseshoe of sandbags along my back fence and the garden beds where the lawn dipped. Seated, the seams tight. Set a removable panel at the basement walkout. Checked everything twice. And if you've ever prepped a house while the sky pretends to be calm, you know the feeling a quiet that isn't peace, more like the air is holding its breath. She rolled up in a silver SUV while I was tapping the panel into its channel window, down HOA badge, glinting white sneakers that looked allergic to mud, and she didn't ask to enter, just walked through my gate like the property line was a suggestion, and read. Section 9 off her clipboard. No earthwork barriers, no foreign materials, no ad hoc structures without board approval. These are unsightly, she said. And I said, water's worse. And she smiled big enough to show me every tooth and handed me a $600 citation. With a deadline removed by 5 p.m., and I folded it, slid it into my back pocket, and said, if water walks through my living room, so the brochure stays honest. That's on you. And she tilted her head and said, that's not how this works. And I said, that's exactly how water works. And yeah, that happened. The alert on my phone crept from watch to warning. The HOA email list went quiet, like the internet lost its tongue. No sand, no guidance, no move. Your car uphill, just hydrangeas trimmed to regulation. Then, close to midnight, I heard a drag across wet grass, Not wind, not rain. A heavy hiss like something being pulled the wrong way. And my doorbell caught it in green-black night vision. 2 figures at the fence line, one tall with a hood, pearls still catching light. Because some people keep their costume even at midnight, the other, a lanky teenager with the sorry already on his face. Elbows under a sandbag, too heavy for his plan. And the mic picked up. Her voice low and quick. Come on. Tyler, make him take the hint, and they didn't just nudge a bag. They gutted. The line rolled some down toward the greenbelt, hid others behind azaleas. Like evidence stashed. Is the same as risk erased. And I didn't bang on the glass or run out with a speech. I hit record, copied the clip to a USB, slid it into a zip bag, because that habit never leaves you. And then the rain came for real. Not the polite kind. The drumbeat kind. Steady and mean. Gutters. Filling, then overfilling the creek. Starting to talk in that deep animal voice. And I ran out in a poncho to plug the open slots with old bags from the shed only. They split sand, bleeding like wet sugar and water. Love's a shortcut, and someone had kindly made it one, so it found the seam and widened it, kissed the back step, thought about it, then pressed harder. And I set the panel, sealed the edges, said a prayer. I hate, because it never sounds brave, more like a promise to show up, if the house asks for it. And the power blinked out around 3, and the storm radio buzzed through county names like a monotone preacher. And I sat there, in candlelight, watching a $30 battery camera feed of my yard, like a haunted movie, where the monster is physics. Dawn brought that smell. You don't forget if you've ever shoveled after a flood, mud and gas, and clean wood turned wet, and my yard looked bruised. But upright, water had seeped under the basement door and darkened the concrete. But the panel held the bags that survived, looked like soldiers who stood past orders. And then I heard the chorus from the bend, the, "Oh my God," in 3 different voices. And I walked down the street. And there it was. Elaine's Valora Phoenix, the custom coupe. She parked at a brag angle, half submerged and pinned against a cottonwood passenger door, flapping like it was trying to breathe. Firefighters roped in, and calm voices counting. And Hank from 2 houses over said, not cruel, just stunned. Image forgot how to swim, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, because storms are honest, and people sometimes aren't, and I knew how fast a neighborhood wants to fold a choice into an act of God. Deputy Morales knocked mid-morning boots. Muddy notepad out, asked if I'd seen anything unusual, and I handed him the bag. No speech, just the thing that would matter, in a room that doesn't care about opinions, and he slid it into evidence and said, "Footage like this, timing matters." And I said, "Yeah, timing. And intent, and if you've ever been ignored where it counts, and then watched the facts show up on your side. You know, the complicated relief, not sweet, not bitter, just steady. The board showed up with clipboards like talismans, taking pictures of fences and acting useful. And the treasurer, Dennis, tried to small talk an apology. And I opened my laptop on the porch and hit play. Raindrops pattering on the mic like the sky chewing gum, pearls flashing at the fence. The line, "Come on. Tyler, make him take the hint," landing flat in daylight, and the clip ended, and nobody had the right sentence, just a lot of throat clearing and a, "That's quite serious," and I said, "That's reckless," and he said they'd convene, and I said they should, because this wasn't flower beds anymore. The emergency meeting that night packed the clubhouse like never before. Damp jackets, mud on boots. The air charged like the storm had rolled indoors, and Elaine tried to hold the room with posture. "We're addressing safety concerns," she said, like the plural. Could spread the blame thin. And Marisol, from across the street, stood up with a toddler on her hip and said, voice shaking, but clear. My backyard almost came inside my kid's rain boots. "Are still in the tub. You told him to take down his sandbags, and you could feel everyone lean without moving." And I said, "Play it. No heat, just the only move that matters. When the truth has a face and a timestamp." And Dennis fumbled the projector, and then the wall went green. And there they were, two silhouettes dragging a bag that didn't want to go. That voice everyone in Cedar Hollow knows in 2 words. And when the clip ended, you could hear a chair leg scratch the floor like a verdict, and Elaine went through every stop on the denial tour. Not me, edited out of context. And I said, "Context is a flood warning, and you removing a barrier because you didn't like how it looked." And Hank said, "She made a channel," which is the sentence any insurance adjuster hears like a bell. And Dennis finally said, "Motion to suspend President Voss. Effective immediately. Pending removal." And second, third rolled in like a tide, and Elaine tried to stand on the last rock. "You can't do this. I am the HOA." And I said, "You were the HOA and the wooden mallet. They keep from mailbox drama found its purpose and tapped once and nobody clapped. Because relief can be heavy too. If you came here for a clean revenge story, I get it. The car in the creek looks like karma with good timing. But what sits with me isn't that image. It's the line between control and care, between rules that protect and rules that perform. Because I've been the guy people roll their eyes at, the one who talks about slope and sheet flow and panel seals. And I've been told a neat lawn is the same as community, and last night proved it isn't. Community is the woman bailing with a mixing bowl at 2 a.m., and the college kid asking how to fill a bag fast, and the retired teacher who shows you water lines on her foundation and says quietly, "I didn't think it would come this far." You know what I mean. The twist everyone wants me to underline is simple. She didn't just write a ticket, she tore down the only thing standing between a creek and my stairwell. Then the storm did what storms do, and the neighborhood got to watch. Physics write the ending. But the part I won't skip is this. When a rule forgets why it exists, it turns into a weapon. And if you aim that weapon at your neighbors' houses and their kids' sleep and call it aesthetics, you shouldn't hold the gavel full stop. I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel a flicker of satisfaction when the vote carried. I did, but it wasn't fireworks. It was exhale, and the real work starts after the gavel. Anyway, drains, drills, texts that go out. When the radar changes. Color, the boring, necessary stuff that never makes the brochure, but keeps the creek in its lane. So tell me what you think was the board right to suspend her on the spot. Or should they have slow-walked it for the sake of the neighborhood brand? Is sharing the video accountability or bullying? And have you ever dealt with rules that forgot why they were written? Drop your take. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you've got a flood story or an HOA story, I'm all ears. I'll be in the comments probably with muddy boots on, ready to talk about water and what we owe each other.